This is a myth.
For you, yeah.
Dark matters. Since the dawn of man, they have been with us. The earliest writings and vivid descriptions of what many believe to be beings not of this world goes back as far as 100 BC. If you search early biblical text, you'll find abductions, artist paintings, and vivid writings as what many modern-day followers of the scripture say are UFOs. Search and you'll find descriptions in the book of Ezekiel, Kings, Isaiah, and Timothy, just to mention a few. Then, in 1956, with the excavation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a book known as the Book of Enoch was discovered. Enoch was the seventh from Adam and the great-grandfather of Noah. Included in the text is him being guided through the heavens in what many modern-day scholars describe as UFOs. However, it was not included in the canons of the Holy Bible, even though the Book of Enoch goes deeper into the details of angels taking him up and showing him the heavens, the moral justification for the flood, and more. In this edition of Dark Matters, we'll have an in-depth conversation with Joseph G. Jordan. Joe is a safety professional for an American contracting company supporting the U.S. and South Korea, where he has lived and worked for the past 10 years. Joe is also the head of CE4 Research Group, an investigative research group that studies the so-called alien abduction phenomenon from a Christian perspective. Additionally, you'll find Joe and Jason on their brand new show on YouTube called The Piercing the Cosmic Veil Show. Welcome to the program, Joe, and my first question right off the bat, we're going to get right on into it. How did this all start for you?
Back in 1992, it was kind of by an accident. I was on a vacation trip, and it was a long trip. I was headed to Alaska to visit my brother, and I was flying out of Orlando, Florida, where I lived in the east coast of Florida, over in Titusville. And I was flying out of Orlando, and it was going to be a 10-hour plus flight. And we didn't have all the technology back then, to pass the time on an airplane. So,
I know.
yeah, I opted for a magazine or a book to pass the time. So I went over to one of the kiosks and was looking for something to read. And being an avid science fiction reader when I was younger, I figured, a good science fiction book would pass the time. So I'm looking around. I really couldn't find a magazine that would, fit something that I would be interested in. So I did go over to the paperback, started browsing through the fiction paperbacks, and I came across one that caught my attention, but it wasn't fiction. It was in the nonfiction section, but it read like fiction. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the title, and I'm like, nah, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
As a fiction reader and somebody who enjoys fiction, there's a reason people enjoy fiction. The reason is because, well, first of all, it's not real, and it's escapism. We can enjoy something that's outside of our normal lives. We can get away from the humdrums and the fast-paced reality that we live in, and just take a break and pick up something that's a fictional story. In science fiction, you can pick up a story and spend the time in reading it and actually put yourself out there into one of those far worlds in a future time, in a future setting with creatures from who knows where, and enjoy that fantasy time period that you're taking that break in before you come back to reality. Maybe that's a little refresher that every one of us need.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was looking for. So I picked this book up, and it read like that on the cover, but when I turned it over and looked at the backside of it, it was not reading like that at all. So that caught my attention and puzzled me. So I decided to grab the book and go ahead and check it out and see what it was, what it was concerning. And that particular book was this one here, UFO Crash at Roswell.
Yep.
And, this is why it caught my attention, because flying saucers, aliens, all that stuff, that's science fiction.
Yeah, that's what we all thought.
I didn't know anything different that it'd be in science fiction. I didn't follow anything with flying saucers back in 1992. I was a hardworking blue collar guy working at a boat company, helping raise my son, looking for a good time on the weekends, and that was it. And here, all of a sudden, somebody's disturbing my reality, what I thought was reality, with this crazy book that was blurring that line between reality and fiction.
Yes.
There should have been that dark black line that says, nope, now you're moving into fiction. Now you're getting ready to just enjoy a nice story and escape from that reality. But no, this book was blurring that line. So that's what caught my attention. That's what brought me down this long, dark, deep rabbit hole into ufology. And it was just question after question after question after question. Well, keep in mind, at this time, I would be what most people would label an agnostic humanist. I didn't believe in God. I didn't follow God. I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, participated in the church, followed the church group, the youth group at the time, all the way up till I was a senior, and got kind of discouraged with the church teachings, and the world kind of chewed me up. I was back during the Vietnam War. I graduated in 1971 during the, probably the very height of the, discouragement with the war. It was right at the very wind down of it. And, I was looking at possible draft and everything else. So, I was not seeing life as a very good thing at the time.
Yes.
There's a lot of fear of not knowing where I was going to end up. And I walked away from the church at that time, and, the world just ate me up from there on. In 1992, I was 42 years, I was before 42. I was earlier than that.
Yeah.
But up close to that age, and, had been away from God for a long time. So agnostic humanist is the perspective I walked into this realm of ufology. That was the perspective I started looking at this at. I was introduced to the Mutual UFO Network by a fellow in Orlando. I was taken through the channels of what the Mutual UFO Network was about. It's a grassroots investigative organization, the largest in the world, still is today. They have research consultants and investigators. It's all nonprofit, voluntary, grassroots organization looking for answers to this phenomenon. And it's scientifically based. So everything is done, through the scientific method. And, they're looking at the nuts and bolts aspect of all of this, trying to find an answer to what this phenomenon is about. They've been around since 1969. If somebody wants to do real, honest, scientific research into this realm, absolutely recommend getting involved with MUFON. They'll train you up. They'll teach you how to do this properly. And you have a wealth of resources available to you, free of charge. The consultants are a phone call away. There's a lot of research consultants that are members that are, master's degrees, PhDs in their field of study. If you need somebody in geology, astrophysics, or, anything, any field that, somebody is a consultant to, if you need them in your case that you're working on, they're there. MUFON will get them in contact with you, and they'll help you deal with whatever you need, for help.
Great organization.
It is, and I'll stand by it. A lot of people have had issues with it over the years, but, that's their problem. I've been with them for 27 years now, and, I'll stand by it. There's nothing else out there like it at this time that's got that type of resource available to you to get the work done. And it's come a long way. When I started out there to do a sighting report back in that time, take you 10 pages of handwritten, report to turn in. Then you'd have to mail it in, and the whole works. Now it's all the person doing the sighting report. The way it's done now is they actually go to MUFON.com and actually do the report themselves online, and it's all just digital. You follow
Yep.
the prompts, and you fill in your report. It triggers a series of connections right through the system that they have set up, the SMS system that they have set up, and it'll get right down to the state section director of where that sighting happened at. And that state section director will eventually get to a field investigator to put on that person to go and do the interview with, and to follow up and do the report. So great setup. And that's what we were doing in the very beginning when I got involved with MUFON. I was trained up as a field investigator, trained how to do these reports, eventually became a state section director for Brevard County, Florida, where this Kennedy Space Center is located,
Yes.
which is where I lived. And I thought, how cool is that? Because I figured I wouldn't be doing many reports there, for one, but it'd be a cool place to be a state section director for MUFON.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because this was during the shuttle program. And I knew that that was probably one of the most highly restricted airspace areas in the world at that time. But you know what? We had sighting reports coming in.
I bet you did.
And that was interesting. There's a lot of neat stories that come out of that, but that's for another time. As I went through this, we set up our meetings. That was a requirement for MUFON as a state section director for a county or a number of counties. You'd set up a monthly meeting, welcoming the public to come in, and you'd educate the public on ufology. You give them updates on, MUFON and what they were doing. Yeah. And you'd also encourage enrollment in MUFON. And the reason for that is because the voluntary membership, even if you come in just as a journal subscriber, which means that that's the lowest membership, but you get a beautiful MUFON journal that you get on a monthly basis. And now you can get it digitally or in hard copy or both with your membership. So that's nice. And it's really a nice journal. It's all laminated color. It's really worth having. It's a nice piece of work that they put out. And we would encourage that for people to join and at least be at that level, if not come on in as a field investigator or a higher level. Because these membership donations that would come in would help support the funding for casework. Because if you really had a good case where you had, let's say, trace elements or things that needed to be tested in a lab, well, getting lab work done can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, it can.
Really good lab. Well, remember, MUFON's nonprofit. So they've got to come up with the funding to pay for those tests. And the only place they can get that is from either membership or benefactors that donate to MUFON. Yes. And there are those that, that do that. We have a large benefactor section that people that are just, they want to help MUFON get the answers to this phenomenon. So amongst that and the fundraisings that they do and the symposiums they do every year, those funds are the ones that help pay for this type of casework. So that's what we were doing with our monthly meetings. Now, we didn't charge for the monthly meetings. They were free. And I had to look for a place to hold these monthly meetings. And somebody said, hey, why don't you check out the local library down in Cocoa? Okay. Because they knew about it, because for some other thing that they were doing, they found out that you could get a meeting room at the Cocoa Library. As long as you weren't charging people, the room was free, and they would give you all the audio visual equipment you needed to do whatever you were doing. They would give you access to it. So I thought, that's cool. So I went down there, talked to them. I said, I only need one Sunday afternoon a month, and I would need VCR at that time and a TV. And they said, no problem, got it for you. They said, you're not charging, right? And I said, not at all. It's a free meeting. So off we went. First meeting, I make up a nice sign. I put it on the door. It said, UFO meeting, free to the public. You ever thought about doing that?
Believe me, I've been in radio 45 years. I know what happens when you put stuff like that up there.
Yeah. Well, I didn't put too much thought into that,
Uh-huh.
but afterwards, I had a lot of thought about it because a lot of weird people showed up.
I bet they did.
Yeah, and a lot of strange stories started coming out of that. But it was all good. I mean, this is why I got into it, try and find out what the answers were to this phenomenon. So the meetings started getting bigger and bigger. And we probably averaged, anywhere from 50 to 60 people, on a good month, every month. And we had regulars that would come in. Sometimes a new would hear about it and they'd come in. The thing is, these people thought that we were the professionals and we had all the answers. So they'd come in wanting us to, help tell them what was happening to them. And it's like, well, this is why you're here, to tell us what happened to
you. Yeah.
Because we don't have the answers. We're the investigators. Once we got that figured out, then, it worked out pretty good to where they were all open to tell us everything from that point. They realized that we needed to work together and they needed to tell us everything they had so that we could try and capture all the information. Now, again, I'm coming at this from an agnostic humanist. I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in God. I don't think any of this is real. I'm just saying, hey, you got to show me. I'm from Missouri.
Yeah.
You got to show me something. But I'm going to keep an open mind for a little while. And eventually, when I don't see something, I'm going to move on and do something else.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give it a stab. So I had 5 good investigators that I had trained up under me in my group. We were doing sighting report follow-ups. We were doing what MUFON wanted us to do. And then we started getting these people coming in that had these different stories.
Okay.
And these different stories were not sightings, but people saying that they had either had contact or abduction experiences with these entities. And I'm thinking, oh, this is different. And I didn't know how to deal with these people. One, these were not happy people.
No, I bet.
At all. Their lives had been turned upside down. Most of them had, all sorts of problems. Their families had been disrupted. Many of them had lost their jobs. They had lost their friends. They weren't handling normal life very well anymore.
Yeah.
Because something had happened to them against their will, and it was continuing to happen against their will. And they didn't know when it was going to happen again. And the experiences that they were remembering were very traumatic and very horrible. And they were coming to us and going, can you help us in any way? And, I just didn't know what to do with this. These people were absolutely distraught.
Yes.
And they were just hoping that we had an answer for them. Many of them had been many other places looking for answers, and they just weren't getting help.
Yeah.
They had looked at different, what do you call it? Group therapy and, getting together with other like-minded people and trying to talk it out. But, that wasn't working for them.
Yeah.
It just crying on each other's shoulder doesn't help, it still continues. So I got to thinking about this and listening to these stories. And I talked to my fellow investigators and I said, guys, I got to look at this closely here. I said, here we are chasing sighting reports after the fact, but yet these people have come in here and they say they're in contact actually with these entities that we're chasing after the fact.
Yes.
Through a sighting report. I said, if you think about this, these people are on the front line of this event. If they're actually encountering these beings that are flying these craft. This is the front line. And I said, I think if we're going to really get to answers in this, we need to be talking to these people and looking at this part of the phenomenon a lot more deeper than what it is being looked at. At this time, back in the early 90s, MUFON really wasn't set up to explore the abduction experience. It wasn't something they could look at scientifically. There wasn't a format to capture the information there. There were researchers in the realm looking at it, Bud Hopkins, John Mack, some of the big ones. But, MUFON wasn't doing it. So I talked to my partners and I said, why don't we move over and focus more on this? We'll still do the sighting reports for MUFON. We're MUFON people, but we'll kind of look more deeper into the abductions. And they said, okay. And I said, well, two things. Let's set up a separate entity, research entity, because we can't really do it under the auspice of MUFON because they don't have a format to do it under.
Yes.
So that's why we set up what is called CE4 Research Group, which is what we're still under today. And the reason we did that is so we could separate the work from MUFON and MUFON not be, responsible for it. But we would set it up under CE4 Research Group, but always make the work available for MUFON for peer review, and which we've always done. We've kept all the work up on the website or, through our YouTube channel for everybody to see. We don't keep anything, hidden. We make sure it's all available for everybody to look at. And, we've done that for 25 years. And the other part was, I said, these people are hurting. And I said, if we're going to work with these people, I don't want to cause any more damage to these people.
Yeah.
If we decide to work with them. So I think we need to educate ourselves into this field as much as possible before we take this on. So we did. We consumed every book we could get our hands on that was published by the leading researchers, videos that were available from their talks, anything that was out there that we could educate ourselves on in this abduction experience before we decided to take this on. And then once we did that, we started doing interviews and started recording these interviews, VHS tape, of people's experiences. And this is how we started into CE4 Research. Now, something I recognized early on was there was an aspect of this experience that I had never seen before, I wasn't familiar with. But in their search for help, they had latched on to something that it was the only thing they could find that hopefully would help them. But it was a type of spirituality that they had come across that they were hoping would give them some kind of, peace or something that would
reasoning, as to what's happening to them.
Yeah. And, I had to look at that, even though that MUFON said, not to be involved in that kind of stuff because, they couldn't research that in any way. And, but I said, as an honest researcher, you have to look at all of the information.
You do. Yeah.
So I said, let's look at what they're dealing with here. Why is this part of this phenomenon to them? And this spirituality that they had connected themselves with as the only hope that they could find was this New Age metaphysical realm of spirituality. It seemed to be the only realm that was there to offer any kind of hope to them, of helping them. The American Christian Church wasn't there in any way to help them. But this other spirituality coming from the New Age metaphysical realm was offering a hand in theories and ideas, whether true or not, I don't know. But they were offering at least something to be able to help these people. And I had no idea what it was. I never heard of this stuff before. So I had to look at it to try and understand and see how it played a part in their thinking, and whether it was doing any good for them, to try and get the whole understanding of the picture. So as I started into looking at all of this stuff, I got sucked right in.
I bet.
I didn't realize that in my life myself, I was missing something. And I guess, it's part of human nature that, we long for something, some kind of spiritual connection, whether we want to admit it or not. Even though I was an agnostic humanist coming into this realm, I was missing something and just didn't admit it. And when this opportunity came available to fill that hole, it did. And the next 4 years of my research and into this realm, I actually took it hook, line, and sinker of this type of spirituality, and was actually practicing in the New Age and metaphysical realm right along with these people. And that right there changed my perspective of how I looked at this phenomenon. Remember, when I first got into this, I was looking at it through
a lens tiny hole,
the lens of an agnostic humanist.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at it through another hole, and that's as a New Age metaphysical practitioner.
Joe, hold that thought. We'll be right back with part 2 of UFOs, Angels, or Demons, as we talk with MUFON Director in Southeast Asia and founder of CE4 Research Group, Joseph Jordan. You're watching Dark Matters with Sky Phillips.